Did you just binge watch the last season of Emily in Paris? Sorry, wrong question. Do you dream of moving to Paris? Of waking up every day in a city famous for its art, fashion, food, and culture? To be surrounded by iconic architecture and beautiful gardens? Grab a warm croissant and stroll along the Seine any day you like. Hello, I'm Nicolette, and I'm an American living in Paris. I'm here to tell you that that dream is possible. But I'm also here to be real and honest with you. Deciding to move to Paris is a big decision. So before you pack up your life and hop on a plane, I've come up with a list of questions that you should ask yourself before making the move, and to figure out if coming here is even the right option for you. Before we get into the first question that you should be asking yourself, I wanted to quickly share something that I wish that I had had before making the move to France, and that is France Channel. France Channel is an online streaming platform with the best French movies, TV series, documentaries, and more, all in one place. This is like the Netflix of French content. They have so many incredible things on there, and everything has English subtitles. They also have a Learn French section where it has content with both English and French subtitles, which is an incredible language learning tool. Honestly, French movies and TV series is what skyrocketed my progress in French, and it also armed me with cultural knowledge and information that ended up being really helpful and helped ease my transition into France from the US. And with France Channel, it makes it a no-brainer and super easy to find French content. Everything is hand-selected by real French people, people who have worked in the film or TV industry. They know what's good and they put it on there. They have French classics, romance, comedies, dramas. I've also been loving their documentary series. They have them on fashion, food, you name it. But my absolute favorite is all of their travel stuff. They have one about like trains in the Pyrenees that you can take, and just like any region or city you can think of, they have a picturesque, beautiful, informative documentary about it. If you want to check out France Channel for yourself, you can use the code HELLO15 for 15% off your monthly or yearly subscription. They also have a 7-day free trial, so you can test it out, see if it's for you, but honestly, your watch list is gonna fill up very quickly. Now, back to the video. Maybe this is obvious, maybe it's not, but the first question to ask yourself is, have you visited Paris before? There are people who move to new cities, new states, new countries without ever having set foot there. But if you have the choice, I would highly, highly recommend you visit Paris before deciding to move here. The Paris that you see in romantic movies, posters, influencers' accounts is not the full picture. It is a curated, picturesque, and romantic slice of Paris. There's literally something called Paris syndrome, which was coined by a Japanese psychologist in the 80s to explain the acute negative psychological and physical reactions some Japanese tourists had upon visiting Paris for the first time. This was primarily due to the extreme gap between their idealized version of Paris and actual real-life Paris. Like any major city, Paris has its dangerous parts. It has its unclean parts. It has 14 square meter apartments with no toilet for 600 euros a month. It has it all. Now, if you have visited Paris before, the next thing to consider is the difference between visiting Paris as a tourist and actually living there. Spending a few days in Paris as a tourist, eating at cafes, visiting landmarks and museums is very different from living your normal day-to-day life here. So if you fall into this category, I would recommend, if possible, spending a longer period of time in Paris and in a less touristy capacity. You could do this by apartment swapping with someone. You could enroll in a language learning program in Paris. You could enroll in a language teaching program like TAPIF. You could find a summer program or an internship, or if you're in college, maybe do a semester abroad. There are a ton of options of how to visit Paris for a longer period of time and not as a tourist. The next question to ask is, do you have a reason to move to Paris? Do you have a why, a motivation? Do you have a job lined up? Are you moving for a partner or a family member? Are you enrolling in school? There are so many different reasons why people move to Paris. Having a concrete reason, a motivation, a why, versus just like, I think it would be cool, will significantly help ground your move and set you up for success and like an actual long-term move versus just like a hopping on a plane, seeing what lands, and maybe having to leave after a few months. Now, if you don't have a job lined up or a partner that you're moving for or school, then the first step you want to take is look into visa options. Personally, I looked at a few different routes. I was looking at being an au pair, teaching for tapif, or enrolling in a master's program. I ultimately decided that going with a student visa and enrolling in a master's program was the best fit for me. I had always wanted to get a master's, and I found that actually public universities in France are incredibly affordable. I enrolled in a 2-year fine arts master's program in Toulouse in the south of France. And then after the 2-year program was up, I moved to Paris. In hindsight, I am so glad that I chose this route. Not only did I genuinely enjoy and grow and learn from the master's program, it also helped me transition into expat life, into life in France, and it just made it so much smoother and easier. Being a student meant I had the support of the school to secure a visa, to get a bank account. I was able to use the student health center. There were so many resources that were available to me as a student. France loves students. It's even like easier to rent an apartment as a student than as let's say a freelancer. If you don't want to go the student route or the au pair route, there are a bunch of other visa options. For example, there is the visitor visa, there is the entrepreneur visa. There are a ton of options. Look into different visa options, do your research. I could do a whole extra video on that, so if you want that, let me know in the comments. It's a bit complicated and can be overwhelming, but know that there are a ton of different options of how to get to France, and the visa that you start on is not necessarily the visa you end up on in a few years. Every single year I renew my visa, and it's just a process. It's a process of being an expat. Are you ready to uproot your life? Your entire life? When I moved to France, I had to say goodbye to my friends, my family, a job, and almost all of my possessions. I moved here with 2 suitcases. That's all I could bring. Everything else I had to sell, donate, or beg my parents to let me store in their garage. I also moved to an entirely different time zone and started living my day-to-day life in a second language. Everything looked really different. It was a really exciting change for me, but it was also pretty jarring, and you need to sit with and think about if you are ready for that level of change. In pretty much every single area of your life, you're gonna have something completely different. Are you ready to distance yourself from your family and friends? And I mean this at both a literal and more metaphorical level. Moving to France from the US meant that I moved across an entire continent, an entire ocean, and multiple time zones. Most days, I cannot talk to my friends or family until after 5 p.m. Paris time. That means that I go through most of my day not being able to contact people over there. That is something that I didn't really fully understand the impact of and how that would feel. I have other expat friends that are from different areas, and so some people, they can only talk to their family very early in the morning. It depends on what country you're coming from, but this is something to factor and consider. Also, personally, I only see my family now once per year. I have not gone back to the US in over 3 years because plane flights are very expensive. So the only time that I've been able to see my family is when they come here. They take a flight to France, and they've been doing that about once per year. I'm really lucky that I have a family that is willing and able to fly to France. I have friends who that's not the situation and they have not physically seen their family in multiple years. For a lot of people, this is a no-go. Like, they just don't want to do that, and that's totally understandable. Other people, this sounds like a dream come true. Like, to get as physically far away from your family, maybe that's the goal. Maybe that's what you want to do, and if that is, maybe expat life is for you. To just go to a completely different continent and time zone than your family. I will also say that moving abroad will enlighten you on who you were friends with simply out of convenience and geographical location. It's gonna change your friend circle, I'll just say that. The next question is annoying, but it's something you need to consider. Can you afford it? And I mean this for both the initial moving expenses as well as the general cost of living. Moving to a new city, state, or country comes with its expenses. So let's start out with moving expenses. For me personally, when I was moving to France, some of the costs that I had were several months of a storage unit so I could figure out what the heck to do with all of my belongings, visa application fees, and also translation service for some visa documents, a plane ticket to France, luggage fees for a second oversized suitcase, 3 months of an Airbnb when I was looking for an apartment in France. And I had to do this twice. I did this first when I initially moved to the south of France, and then I did it again when I arrived in Paris from the south and was looking for an apartment in Paris. Then once I found an apartment, there was an application fee and a 1-month security deposit. Also, the cost of tuition for the school program. So if you're enrolling in school, that's another expense. I had to get a SIM card for my phone, so my phone would be working before I officially enrolled in a French phone plan. I also now pay a few dollars a month to have my US phone number ported so that I can still receive like those bank login text messages. Honestly, there were probably a ton of other random expenses that I am not thinking of at the moment, but those were like the major ones that came to mind initially. Basically, it costs a lot of money to move, and it's a lot of money all at once up front. So if you're thinking about moving here, I highly suggest you start saving. The next thing to consider is the general cost of living and how that compares to your current cost of living. If you are living in a small town in the middle of America, moving to Paris is going to be a significant change. It's going to be much more expensive. If, for example, you're living in New York City or San Francisco or Los Angeles, it's actually going to be probably cheaper, the same level or cheaper. And if you end up deciding to move, like let's say from New York City to an area other than Paris, like elsewhere in France, is going to be significantly cheaper. So it really depends on where you're moving from. I made a video about how to find an apartment in Paris, and I towards the beginning go into more detail about the current cost of housing here. So if you're interested in getting into more of the nitty-gritty, you can check out that video. I will link it in the description. The third thing you need to consider financially is how you're going to support yourself while you're in France, and also like what your visa allows you to do legally. On a student visa, I was only allowed to legally work in France for a very minimal amount of hours. Visitor visas, for example, you legally are not allowed to be working in France when you're on them, so you're going to need a lot of savings or some other source of income that is not coming from France. So this is really important and something you need to be thinking about. Have you considered other locations? Do you want to move to Paris, or do you just want to move? Maybe moving to a new city, a new state, heck, a new apartment might be the change that you're craving. But if you definitely are craving moving to France, have you considered French cities other than Paris? Obviously, Paris, it's the capital, it's internationally renowned, but there are so many other cities and beautiful regions in France to consider. This is also a great thing to think about if, after that financial question, you're like, oh shoot, I think Paris is too expensive. There are other regions of France that are significantly cheaper than Paris, and that might be the best fit for you. For example, Toulouse, the south of France, that was like cost of living literally half the amount of Parisian living. Paris is a fast-paced metropolitan city. It can be really stressful, and I honestly think that if I had immediately made the move directly from the US to Paris, that would have been too much. It would have been overwhelming. And I'm really grateful that I was able to ease into expat life, all of the culture shock, the day-to-day shock in a smaller city like Toulouse, and then be like prepared and move to Paris. Essentially, if you're thinking about France as a video game, Paris is the most expert, high level option. Like that is the top level of this video game. Other cities in France, the smaller you get, the lower the level, it's a less intimidating, slower paced. You just gotta decide, are you ready to immediately hop into the big leagues, or do you wanna start somewhere else? Or maybe there's a place that like is perfect for you in France that isn't Paris. Just know that there's a whole other rest of the country to explore. Are you ready for the language barrier? The official language of France is French, so it's inevitable that if you move here, you're gonna have to interact with and use the French language. Now, I will say that Paris specifically is a very international city. There are a lot of Anglophones here, so there are a ton of resources in English, events, groups, meetups. It is very possible to live your day-to-day life here in English, which actually was really surprising for me coming from the south of France where that is not necessarily the case. I have friends, expat friends who live here, have been living here for years and still are at like an A1 level of French. So that's absolutely a possibility and something that shouldn't hinder you from moving, but know that it's just gonna be a different way of life. It's gonna be possibly more stressful and more challenging. When you're in France, anything administrative, it's gonna be in French. When you have to call the internet company, the electricity company, the plumber, renew your visa, it is all gonna be in French. And if you don't know the language, that's gonna be an added stress to your probably already stressful life. Also, it's gonna limit the amount of people that you can meet, the interactions you can have, the events that you could go to. Knowing a second language just opens up so many more doors for you and also helps you live a more like authentic life in Paris that is connected with the French way of life, the French culture, and the city itself. Also, something to consider is that textbook French, like something you learn in high school or college, is not the same as day-to-day living your life in French. I learned that when I moved here. So before moving here, I had a B2 level of French. And the first few months were very stressful. I think I underestimated how exhausting it would be to live in a second language. People speak very quickly, they have different accents, they use a lot of like slang or abbreviations, they talk over each other, you enter into a conversation midway through when you don't know what the subject is. It's a real rodeo. The first few months were definitely the most stressful and the most exhausting. I was like, what did I sign myself up for? Can I do this? But I will say that after that, things really started to click. Definitely has a lot to do with the fact that I was enrolled in a French university. So all the classes were taught in French. But inevitably, even if you're not in school in French, being in France is immersion, and it's gonna really speed up the language learning process. So if you're not at a strong level of French right now, don't let that be the one thing that hinders you from moving here. It's a language, you can learn it. Okay, I know we covered a lot. That might have been very overwhelming. At the end of the day, moving to Paris is a big decision, and it's also something that only you can know whether or not it's the right fit for you. If you feel in your heart, in your soul, that Paris is calling you, there's probably a reason. I encourage you to explore that possibility. There may be a beautiful story waiting for you here. As cheesy as that sounds, it's true. I am so glad that I made the decision to move here. My life has completely changed, and I think it's all for the best. I really feel at home here. If you're feeling called to move to Paris, I encourage you to take the first steps to look into that. Start practicing French, start looking into visa options, and know that it is absolutely possible. It doesn't have to be an immediate move. I had been dreaming about moving to Paris almost my whole life, and I also, made the decision and was researching visas over 2 years before I started moving here. I had thought about moving earlier, and then I decided to give myself an extra year to improve my French and to get together a better portfolio for schools. So it doesn't have to be instantaneous, okay? You don't need to hop on a plane tomorrow. If you're meant to be in Paris, you will get to Paris eventually.